So, welcome once again. This time to our sixth and final video of this second course. Our theme today is Mindfulness, Clear and Radiant, and our challenge is achieving it. In the first course, we looked at working on the mind in meditation to create new positive states of mind that we haven't already experienced. The second course, our theme has been working with the mind in everyday life. Ethics, what we say, what we do, and how we think, what we do with our mind, and how that affects our mind. We've already looked at the 3 precepts of the body. Negatively, I undertake to abstain from taking life. I undertake to abstain from taken and not given. I undertake to abstain from sexual misconduct. And positively, with deeds of loving kindness, I purify my body. With open-handed generosity, I purify my body. With stillness, simplicity, and contentment, I purify my body. And a speech precept, our theme last week. I undertake to abstain from false speech. And positively, with truthful communication, I purify my speech. And we looked at other themes concerning truthful speech, including factual accuracy, exaggeration, and why we are tempted to do so, and a combination of truthful and kindly speech, and of course, literal speech, something being literally true, and poetic speech, something being poetically true. Literal and poetic speech, literal and poetic truth, expressing different dimensions of experience, different dimensions of reality. And now we move on to the mind. I undertake to abstain from taking intoxicants. With mindfulness clear and radiant, I purify my mind. This is the last of the 5 precepts that everybody in the Triratna Buddhist Community tries to practice. Our practice being what makes us a member of the community. But we have another list of 10 precepts for order members, for more intensive practice. Instead of just 1 precept for the mind that we've already looked at, we have 3. The 5th precept is a foundation for these 3 practices, these 3 precepts. We build upon it. What are they? We can look at them for interest and inspiration. I undertake to abstain from covetousness. I undertake to abstain from animosity. I undertake to abstain from false views. And more positively, abandoning covetousness for tranquility, I purify my mind, changing hatred into compassion, I purify my mind, transforming ignorance into wisdom. I purify my mind. But today we've got enough to look at with the fifth precept. So we'll be looking at the precept. Undertake to abstain from taking intoxicants. And with mindfulness clear and radiant, I purify my mind. People often think that this precept refers to not drinking alcohol. And it's true, it's an important aspect. But there's a lot more to it than just not drinking. What we'll see, what that is, we'll see in a moment. Well, our whole culture of the consumer society relates to this precept. We'll see why in a moment. But first, let's ask the simple question, what is the consumer culture? Basically, we buy what we want, when we want. We have a free choice. We buy all the elements of our life. All it depends on is having enough money. And that depends on doing what it takes to have enough money, which usually takes quite a large proportion of our waking lives. This means that material development is our priority. Material development rather than spiritual development. To partake in the consumer society, we don't need to make any internal change. We can just stay as we are and just receive from outside. Alcohol, of course, plays its part in the consumer culture. We want to have a really good party with lots of energy, so we buy lots of alcohol for everybody. So not only are we clouding our awareness, but continuing to go along with the philosophy of getting what we want from outside. We can even bring this attitude to the spiritual life. All the different teachers, all the different practices, all the different books on spiritual development you can buy. It's all become what we could call a spiritual supermarket. We do what we want when we want. I'll have a bit of this, then a bit of that. I'll do this practice for 6 months, then I'll do that. All of this means we don't really practice anything for a long time. We don't keep relations with teachers or friends for a long time. Which means we don't develop any depth in what we do. we don't really meet ourselves. Without meeting ourselves, we can't really change ourselves, not on a deep level. Everything stays superficial, even though we can collect a lot of knowledge and sound as if we're really wise and knowledgeable. Just to say that yes, the spiritual life is about developing freedom. The Dharma has one taste, the taste of freedom. But it's important to remember this is a freedom that comes as a fruit of years and decades of discipline and practice. It's very different to the freedom of having what you want when you want. So this is a dimension of the fifth precept, what we're looking to abstain from, to leave behind the attitude of living in a consumer culture. We need to buy food, of course, clothes, but having the attitude that everything that we need for life we can buy without changing ourselves. Even when it comes to things spiritual. Do you find freedom in discipline? That's the first question for you. Does the Dharma have a taste of freedom for you? Another aspect of the negative form of this precept concerns dulling awareness. We try to avoid activities that dull our awareness. That alcohol dulls our awareness, I think, is obvious. Not only as we drink more and more, we're progressively losing the ability to move our body, coordinate our body. We might even completely lose awareness of it, fall unconscious. And when we're drunk, there's a loss of memory. You can wake up the morning after and not have a clue what happened the night before. In the Pali Canon, one of the words we translate as awareness is sati. And the literal meaning of sati is memory. Awareness is more than just memory, of course, more than just good memory. But good memory is an important aspect of awareness. I certainly find that when I'm in an aware state, I can have a very good memory. I can remember things that happen in quite a lot of detail, conversations in quite a lot of detail, sometimes decades later, not to speak of years later. In contrast, this is being drunk and waking up and not being able to remember what we did last night. I know that one as well. But just to mention, people sometimes ask, can I drink a little? and keep the spirit of this precept? Is a glass of wine okay with a meal? Is social drinking okay? Well, the principle is not losing awareness. So we can drink if we don't lose our awareness, if we don't dim or cloud our awareness. Although it's true to say that even a little alcohol can harm our awareness. I've noticed this as well. Even a glass of something or other, especially if our awareness is more refined. And if we have a strong habit of drinking, an addiction, and we can't stop once we've started, then the only course of action, our spiritual benefit, is just to completely stop, to completely give up, at least to do all that we can to stop. It's better to have tried and failed than not to have tried at all. And the question for you, for our chat, our groups and WhatsApp: how much can you drink before you notice your awareness being dulled? But as I said, it's not just about alcohol. What else this precept concerns, we'll see in a moment. So there are many other things that, other than alcohol, that can cloud our awareness. There are many other things other than alcohol that can give us the experience that we want. We want energy, we want emotions, we want a happy state of mind. And sometimes these things that do it for us are addictive. Coffee is one thing that immediately comes to mind. But also there are things that we can take, things that we can do to stop us having experiences that we don't want. It might be a surprise, but cigarettes is one of these. I have friends who've said that they've given up smoking and they started to feel a lot more emotions. And they realize that they use cigarettes to dull their emotions. And then, of course, there's all sorts of illegal drugs. I won't even attempt any kind of survey. But some people say certain drugs are part of the spiritual path. They talk of the spiritual life as going into the Mexican desert and taking psychedelics. That's true. Psychedelics can open up possibilities of radically different states of consciousness, new dimensions of experience that can interest one in the practice of meditation and going further. But this experience we might call vision, and vision alone. There are other ways to experience vision, having a deeper experience of something, or inspiration from a work of art, or a great novel, or film. But it's important to remember that there's a vision, but there's also the path of transformation. The path of transformation is to change us in accord with that vision, to transform all of ourselves, to be what we were in that moment of vision, to be us at our best. The path of transformation can only be traversed by our own efforts to practice, our own efforts in internal change. And indeed, there's a spiritual danger, a spiritual cul-de-sac. We feel that we get vision from outside, and if we don't make efforts of transformation, then no transformation happens. But if we keep getting a little bit of vision, we become dependent on that vision. We get spiritually stuck and can go no further. If we get that vision, those moments of vision from a teacher, for example, but don't make the efforts for transformation on the path in our everyday lives, then we get stuck. We get dependent on the teacher, receiving a little bit from them, but doing nothing ourselves. Probably even worse if you get vision from psychedelic drugs. If you carry on taking them, there's highly negative effects, mental disturbances, even mental illness. Our lives can be ruined. So, taking them can become a breach of the first precept, causing harm, namely causing harm to ourselves, as well as the fifth. And any substances that we take that inhibit our ability to develop our intuitive sense. It's so essential for more refined ethical behavior, this intuitive sense which allows for spontaneous ethical behavior and more absorbed states in meditation and creative states of mind, not to speak of wisdom. Anything we take that limits the possibility for this development of our intuitive sense does us great harm, spiritually speaking. My question for you, what are your vision experiences? What are the sources of your vision experience? I'd be interested to hear. In our modern world, People often say we don't have enough energy. We always feel tired. And the causes for this can be connected with the Fifth Precept too. If we look at meditation, there's said to be 3 causes for not having enough energy. And these 3 causes are connected to everyday life as well. The first of these is our energy is blocked. Maybe we're always controlling ourselves, always mastering ourselves, mastering the situation as we live our lives. We're doing this in quite an unhealthy kind of way. Maybe controlling ourselves becomes an unconscious reaction, an unconscious part of our being. So, when we sit and meditate, our energies don't spontaneously flow. They're not available to us. We have a habit, an unconscious habit of blocking them. Because they're blocked, we feel that we lack energy. We feel that we lack energy in meditation. One antidote to this are the receptive practices of meditation. We saw them in the 4th video of the first course. Formless meditation and just sitting. They're receptive practices, not active practices. We don't try to do anything, we just try to be receptive to what happens. So whatever's been controlled to death and blocked can start to flow again. And if we do this in meditation, it's bound to have a knock-on effect in everyday lives. Remembering that we can't transform what we never meet. Something stays in the shadows, always stay there to haunt us. My question for you are, what energies that were blocked have started flowing again since you started meditating? Have you had an experience of this? So the second cause of a lack of energy in meditation is this. Our energies are dissipated. Why is this? In everyday life, our energies are always focused outwards. We're always busy engaging with the world through the senses, constantly jumping from one thing to another, one activity to another, without ever really going very deeply into any of them. The objects can be very attractive, so little is demanded of us to stay focused. And we simply don't have the habit to look deeply inside ourselves, to stay in touch with what's going on inside ourselves. And if we have a conversation, remembering what we said about dialogues, we just jump from one topic to another, never staying to focus more deeply on one question never penetrating the depths of one question. So how do we remedy this situation? This situation of our energies being dissipated. Here I'll give you two ideas of what we can do in everyday life, rather than when we sit to meditate. There's the value of being bored. Yes, the value of being bored. This might be a surprise, but when we stop being busy, when we allow ourselves to do nothing, we can often feel bored. But here, we're asked to not fight the boredom. Don't fight the feeling. Don't try to find something to do. If we give ourselves a chance to experience the boredom, we create the context where deeper energies can arise. It's something that happens spontaneously. We can't make it happen. We just have to sit and create the space. Sit with our boredom. Sit being receptive and open to whatever thoughts and emotions, energies, memories, images might arise. When they do, they'll come from a deeper place. And the value of being alone, the second one, spending time alone. And here the challenge is not to fight the feeling of loneliness. When we're free, when we're alone, we're free from what others think about us, free from their projections, free from power relations, free to get in contact with who we really are, find the best in us. So there's value in being in contact with our aloneness to develop our true individuality. There are these two methods in everyday life, allowing ourselves to be bored and alone and lonely, can help us get in contact with these deeper energies to remedy the dissipation of energies that will benefit our meditation as well as our everyday lives. My question for you is, what is your experience of dissipated energy and getting in touch with these deeper energies through not doing anything, through being alone? So thirdly and lastly, our energies are too gross. And this is where alcohol comes into play. The quality of gross energies is they can be strong for a while, but they don't last. It's energy without awareness. And when they don't last, they change into the opposite. And in the long run, there might be the reverse effect, and we get weaker. If we get drunk, we might feel a lot of energy at the time. And then the next day, or two or three, we feel awful and drained. Or even with intense physical exercise. We can exercise for a while, but then we need to rest. If we overexert ourselves, we might get injured and have to have a break from exercise, might not even be able to walk for a while. So the opposite of these gross energies are subtle and refined energies. Refined energies can flow much more freely, and they can continue flowing. They can get stronger and stronger, more and more refined. So what are these refined energies? It's not entirely straightforward to say, but we can experience them in meditation, in higher states of consciousness. And how do we refine our energies? We can do so by choosing refined objects to which we give our attention. There's a practice of guarding the doors of the senses, stopping watching films that include a lot of violence, for example. But there's a general principle. You have to stop energy flowing on lower levels, i.e. more gross energy, for the possibility of the energies to start flowing on higher levels, more refined energy. So the first step might be simply to stop doing activities that impede our awareness, like stopping drinking, and doing activities that increase our awareness, like meditation, being alone, striving for mindfulness, clear and radiant. But we might not know how and when these refined energies will start flowing. We might feel that gross energies are all we have. We might feel we've got a choice: gross energy or no energy. Here, we simply need to take a leap of faith. Just try it and see what happens. We shouldn't be scared to fail. And if we do, we can share our experience with people more experienced. Maybe they'll have some useful advice, help us in a real learning situation. We can create a learning situation where we're trying to do something, coming up against limitations, expressing our experience to somebody who's more experienced themselves, who might be able to give us valuable advice. So there's great value in creating learning situations. And a question for you: what's your experience of refining energies, or even leaving grosser energies to one side? So we've seen how our energy can be blocked, dissipated, or simply too gross. That's causes for feeling that we have a lack of energy. But now I'd like to look at one more area that concerns the Fifth Precept. That's the internet. The internet, I remember the days before we had it. It has many positives. You can keep in touch with friends. These days you can bump into somebody by chance somewhere and spend the next 40 years wishing them happy birthday. It's allows for a great sense of connection and for information and perspectives from all over the world, knowledge from all over the world, culture from all over the world. So certainly positives exist, but the internet's another area that can dull our awareness. Many can spend hours each day online. That's a great source of gross energy and a source of negative emotion. Examples of negative emotion: lots of criticism, negative criticism. I would like to say here that positive criticism exists. Positive criticism is done on the basis of metta and as its desire to find the truth and to be in deeper communication. But this is quite different from the negative criticism that I'm thinking about here. With negative criticism, you can get carried away on a wave of emotion. There's no attempt to try to see things from the other person, the other standpoint, the other point of view. There's no attempt to try and make sense and understand. Rather, there's just a dismissing of certain perspectives, brutal dismissal of certain perspectives, or even a lack of acknowledging that they exist. And the emotional element, a total lack of sympathy. One other example is someone has an accident. Maybe it could be seen as a bit comic. Somebody happens to be taking a video of it. The person having the accident might spend weeks in hospital in pain, but the video goes viral. People have a good laugh at it, with no thought to how the person feels. So not only do we dull our energies, but our natural ability to feel sympathy and solidarity with other living beings is dulled and inhibited. And we can feed that negativity with our attention. And if we do reposts with such negative content, we're taking concrete steps ourselves to spread the negativity. It becomes part of us. And it impedes the emergence of deeper, more refined, not to speak of more metaphor energies. So this concerns the fifth precept as well. So I've nearly finished talking about the negative form of the fifth precept. And just to finish, I'd like to take back and get an overview of this precept. Or maybe it'd be better to say, get a sense of what really is behind our practice for this precept. We could say that the spiritual life is motivated by dukkha. Dukkha, word in Pali or Sanskrit, it can be translated as suffering. Not that we're in pain all the time, more of a sense that there must be something more to life. This is dukkha, a sense of the meaninglessness of everyday experience, or even a sense of not everything, nothing always goes completely to plan. There's always a fly in the ointment, something's always going wrong. Or even if we are happy and feeling pleasure, a sense that a deeper, more intense happiness or pleasure is possible, but out of reach. This is dukkha, and dukkha being the first of the Four Noble Truths. Famous teaching of Buddhism. The Four Noble Truths being suffering, the cause of suffering, which is craving, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. All I wish to say here is that anything that masks our dukkha, anything that helps us escape it, to control it even, and this is a nub of this precept, anything that masks our dukkha, intoxicates us, dulls our awareness. All of this harms our motivation and ability to lead the spiritual life. And what could be worse than that? So now we come to the positive form of the fifth precept. So we've moved from body to speech, and now we're moving from speech to mind. With mindfulness clear and radiant, I purify my mind. With mindfulness clear and radiant, I purify my mind. So the essence of this precept is developing awareness. And we've already looked quite a lot about developing awareness. Meditation as a whole can be seen as developing awareness. Ethics and practice in everyday life can be considered bringing more awareness into our everyday lives and acting on the basis of it. We can even see the spiritual path as essentially a path of developing awareness. The spiritual life as a whole is a life developing awareness, reaching higher and higher states of consciousness, an evolution of consciousness, not just biological evolution, but something higher, until we reach enlightenment itself. So there's a lot we can say about the positive form of this precept. Developing mindfulness, clear and radiant. But here, I'll just look at one teaching, since we've looked at other things in other places. And it's a teaching that we can practice in meditation as well as in everyday life. It's called staying in the gap. Staying in the gap. And what's your experience of staying in the gap? My question for you for reply in chat. How do you understand what it is? So, to stay in the gap, we need to know what the gap is. So it's important to explain the gap. And let's look at it in terms of the law of universal conditionality. The law of universal conditionality. It states that everything arises in dependence on conditions. All events, physical or mental, arise in dependence on conditions. And in the absence of those conditions, they too cease. So that's the general law. There is a specific form of this law, and it's found in the teaching of the 12 nidanas, or the 12 links of conditioned co-production. The teaching on the 12 links of conditioned co-production is one of the teachings that express what the Buddha understood on the night of his enlightenment, what he understood to become enlightened. So it's a deep teaching indeed. These 12 links are also found on the outer rim of the Tibetan Wheel of Life. And they explain these 12 nidanas, the causal processes causing birth and rebirth of our life and our fate. We choose our fate. But here we're only concerned with one link, roughly in the middle, the link between feeling and craving. More specifically, in dependence on feeling arises craving. Usually, when we have a certain feeling, craving arises automatically. But here we can come back to the question of the gap. What is the gap? The gap is the gap between feeling and craving. The gap is when, in dependence on feeling, we don't experience craving. There isn't that automatic response. We just stay with the feeling. We experience the feeling without craving, without compulsion. It's called a gap because there's a space where we have a choice. We're free. And it's a subtle teaching. It's not easy to grasp. It's not easy to find the gap, in our own experience. We have to be very much in touch with our own experience. And that's why meditation helps to slow down our mind, to notice the automatic reflexes as we meditate, and suffuse those automatic reflexes with awareness. Let them relax, these reflexes, so they are no longer automatic. So they dissolve, the impulses dissolve. This is a work of meditation to help us staying in the gap. But we haven't finished talking about the gap just yet. So, the end of a long day. So, to be able to stay in the gap, what do we need to do? We need to be able to recognize craving. Just to mention, some people might think, I don't have any craving. Some people go to meditate for the first time, they say, I don't hate anybody, when introduced to the fourth stage of the Metta-bhavana. But Buddhism tells us craving is in our nature. We were born human beings because we experience craving. And if we think we don't experience craving, well, as well as craving, we probably are experiencing ignorance, ignoring an aspect of our experience, which means we're experiencing 2 out of the 3 poisons in the hub of the wheel of life. And not recognizing our craving makes spiritual development even harder. Okay, we might accept that we have it, but we're not really sure kind of when or how. How to tell where our craving lies? Well, when the object of our craving is taken away, disappears, goes away of their own accord. When we can't get the object of craving, well, we experience hatred or frustration or other negative states. We get angry or upset, depressed, etc. All might seem to be going fine until we lose the object. So that's how to identify craving. What happens as a consequence of craving? Well, it leads on to action. The automatic response, we act to get what we want, to get what we crave. And we not only act, we develop habits of action. And these habits create the world in which we live, our lifestyle, identity. We create even our own fate, all out of craving for getting what we want, all out of craving arising in dependence on feeling. But to clear up a misunderstanding, that sometimes people think, all this talk about craving means that if we stay in the gap, we just end up not doing anything. Buddhism isn't Stoicism. It's more that our action for motivation changes. For example, our motivation for eating becomes having a healthy body and physical energy, enough to do what we need to do. Rather than eating for pleasant feelings, or eating to get something which food by its nature can't provide. Eating chocolates because we crave love. So we don't overeat. We don't eat what we don't need. We don't undereat. The example of which is anorexia, an example of which is anorexia. A deeper example of how our motivation changes. We stop acting to get what we want. We stop acting egotistically to get pleasant feelings. And instead, A motivation for action is compassion, universal compassion, egoless compassion, actions for the spiritual benefit of all. It might actually feel a lot more pleasant. Our energies might flow a lot more intensely than egotistical action, but the pleasant feelings aren't the reason why we do it. And the highest expression of this unegotistical action is exemplified by the Bodhisattva, vowing to gain enlightenment for the benefit of all, for the sake of all. So, reflecting, we have the chance to a little more on the nature of craving, so as to stay in the gap between feeling and craving. So, let's come back to staying in the gap. It's a subtle thing, noticing the gap, let alone staying in it, noticing the pause, the possibilities of not reacting with craving to feeling. And noticing it is a skill we develop through awareness. And it can help, as I already said, to stop doing certain actions, especially certain harmful or negative actions, addictive actions. Drinking alcohol is an excellent example. To create a learning situation where we feel our craving through not getting what we want. You'll probably be uncomfortable, but if you stay with it and don't try to escape the feeling, it will give you a chance to see more clearly how craving arises in dependence on feeling. And it will give you the chance to find feeling without craving. All this is sounding a little bit bleak. It might be worth remembering that feeling without craving should be much more pleasant than feeling with craving, much more pure and relaxed. One approach might be to search for deeper pleasure in our experience. Another approach is to ask what we really want from the object we crave. I gave up smoking overnight when I realized that what I really wanted from a cigarette was just to sit and focus on my own body. That was enough. And all of this self-examination can trigger a process of change. Through a deeper presence and awareness of our experience. In meditation, when we don't follow up our feelings through craving, when we can experience our feelings more deeply, more purely, And all of this can change the structure of our consciousness, can change our character, can change how we relate to the world, can change our fate to something much better. Okay, so good day to you. So now, starting to bring the video to a close, we'll do a guided meditation, looking at staying in the gap, discovering the gap. So putting a bolster behind my back to keep a good straight posture, being upright and comfortable, getting the two-in-one of those qualities, the higher third. We'll begin the meditation. So taking a moment to settle into our posture, finding a good posture, upright and alert posture. And settling into our body. Settling into all the feelings and sensations in our body now. The endless flow of changing feelings. The endless flow of changing sensations. And bringing our attention into the room for a moment. Listening to all the sounds in our room. and expanding our attention out beyond our room, listening to all the sounds beyond our room. And bringing your attention back to your body once again. Establishing a stable awareness of your body. Establishing a stable awareness of the rhythm of your breathing. And if your mind wanders, just coming back to the body and the breathing as soon as you can. Maintaining as best as you can a stable awareness of your body and the breath, just allowing your awareness to include the thoughts and images, the memories that arise as you're seated here. Just sitting and waiting for something to come up. It might take a while, Don't worry. And as the feeling, as the thoughts, or images, or memories come up, also look to notice the feelings they evoke, all in a stable context of an awareness of body and breath. And now, choosing one of the actions, no, choosing one of the thoughts that's emerged, that's come up in the last little while, and decide now to focus upon it. And to remember it a little more clearly, this thought. Are there any actions this thought demands of us? Are there any actions this thought asks of us? Just take a moment to identify what they are. And if you can identify an action linked to the thought, then what's the craving? Is there a craving behind the action? Is there a craving motivating the action? trying to identify the craving that's there, if there is one. And if you've managed to identify the craving, what's the feeling behind the craving? What's the feeling involved? Is it a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant one? Or something in between, just neutral? Taking our time to be aware of the feeling, staying with the feeling, suffusing the feeling with awareness, suffusing ourselves with the feeling. Whilst maintaining the context of a stable awareness of our body and breathing. And now, bringing our whole attention to our body and the rhythm of our breathing in the body. and expanding our attention out into our room. And beyond our room. And when you're ready, slowly and gently opening your eyes to finish the practice. So how did the meditation go? Well, we're nearly at an end now. We've been looking at the fifth precept, the negative form of which is I undertake to abstain from taking intoxicants. Looking at how life in a consumer society and consumer culture is related to this precept, and the different ways we can dull our awareness, including alcohol, of course, and a little about some drugs, and a feeling of a lack of energy, the causes for it, and how to refine our energy, and of course the internet and this precept. Positively speaking, there was, with mindfulness clear and radiant, I purify my mind. Of course, this bringing into view the whole subject of developing further our awareness. And we just looked specifically at the practice of staying in the gap. Questions for you, for our groups in Telegram or chat? A quick resume of those finding freedom in discipline. Does this idea speak to you? And how much can you drink before you notice your awareness starting to be dulled? And what's our experience of activities that dull our awareness? What's our experience of getting experiences from outside, buying them? And what's your experience of energies that were blocked that have started to flow after starting to meditate? What were your thoughts on the comments on dissipated energy? And your experience of refining energies? And how do you get on with staying in the gap? finding the gap, understanding even what it is. And finding the cravings, because of which we try to stay in the gap. And finally, how is your meditation? Interested to know about all of these. Well, the second course is coming to an end now. I hope you continue meditating to develop greater and greater levels of awareness. And that this video and all these videos have given you further ideas about how to improve the quality of your life by improving the quality of your mind and the quality of the activities and words that you do and say in the course of everyday life. The purpose, of course, being to improve the quality of your mind, your actions and thoughts to an unimaginable degree. And the great message of hope that the Buddha discovered was that this is possible. I wish you the best of luck on the path to that possibility.